Hello and welcome back, listeners, to Break It to Make It, your weekly dose of the stories from people you want to know, the people who are throwing out the rule book, failing forwards, or taking the road less traveled to come out on top. Today, we're talking about starting a business. The reality is that at least 90% of startups fail. 10% of those startups fail within the first year. And statistically, that's across all industries. There's no real difference between failure rates across industries. So they're pretty close to being the same. But what about those that are wildly successful? That special 10%. What's their secret? There might not be a one size fits all approach, but today we're going to learn from one man's journey down a road that he didn't even know existed. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, teacher, journalist, broadcast expert, and former world ranked tennis star. Today, he's the founder and CEO of the highly successful Test Bros, a Chattanooga based operation that helps Tesla owners customize, protect, and maintain their vehicles. Welcome to the show, Ji Hoon Heo.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, mate, welcome, G. It's so great to be able to spend time with you today. And I'm so pumped for people to be able to hear your story because it's a really interesting one. You've always been entrepreneurial, and that entrepreneurial spirit really started young. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your early years?
Yeah, so I was actually born in South Korea, but my dad and mom were missionaries. So they actually moved to the island of Saipan, which is right off Guam in the Pacific. It's like right by 3, 4 hours away from Japan. And my dad as a missionary did not make a lot of money. Surprise, right? So a lot of times when I wanted something, I think I had to be a lot of creative. So I had to either figure out a way. I wanted Pokemon cards. I figure out a way to trade up to a Pokemon card I wanted, or Beyblades, whatever that may be. And it got me creative and resourceful as far as having to figure it out. And then especially in my earlier years too, I played tennis since I was 6, 8, and I traveled a lot. And I think that really molded me and shaped me to who I am today, as far as being resourceful, being understanding the world at an earlier age, and being able to travel to almost 30 plus countries by the time I was 18. So that really allowed me to see the world a different way and also be resourceful. And, I think those small moments in my life at the earlier ages really helped me to become who I am today.
That's amazing. And you you have an amazing educational background as well. You've studied, you've been successful across a variety of industries, and we could talk a lot about that. But I want to kind of narrow down on one little piece of your history because I think that a lot of people can relate to it. It's the big boy phase. Can you talk a little bit about your study
Hmm.
and what you did earlier in your career where
Right,
you studied something that could lead to your big boy job
right,
and you were
right.
going through the motions? Can you talk about sort of why you did it and what it felt like?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was in college and I was 18 years old, I was in Hawaii. And it's hard to be in school and in Hawaii, because there's just so much going on. There's surf, there's parties and all that. And I think I was just like doing what my parents or people that were mentoring me was telling me to do. So I really enjoyed content production, but back then, I was studying video production, and that's what I really, really wanted to do. Been in video production since I was 14. It was a good way for me to decompress when I was playing tennis, coming back from tournaments. But then the other side of me, or other people telling me, they're going to tell you, you don't make any money in video production or photography or art or anything like that. So I did a double major, and I was doing international studies in China, South Korea, and Japan. And that was fun, I guess. But it definitely was like, okay, I can, if the video thing doesn't work out, I could be like a diplomat or something like that. So that was the idea. I didn't really connect the dots when I was 18 years old, of course. And then I ended up moving to a university, Morehead State in Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky. and they didn't have international studies. So I actually decided I was a little bit more mature, and then decided to okay, let's just try this out. I feel like I can figure it out, and then I went full time into video production. They called it convergent media, like fancy word for that. And then after that, I decided to go take journalism. I love telling stories. I just really enjoy that. I love talking to people, interviewing people, and then telling their story and stories that normally you won't hear, right? So I did go to Ole Miss after that for masters. And right after that, I did take the job. I've always had an entrepreneurial niche, like wanted to always do some or itch to really do something of my own, create something from the ground up. I've always been a builder of some sort, as a kid as well. But I think I got married pretty young. I was married. I'm married now 6 years, which is pretty crazy. So I was married when I was 24. So I think the first thing is like you need some stability, especially when you get married at first. So Ole Miss actually offered me a job after my graduate studies, and ended up taking that job. And honestly, it was a very good job. Really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it, and it allowed me to give that sense of, I guess, certainty that I needed in that part of the life. But eventually, I think after a couple of years or 3 years, I was itching again, and I was wanting more, and I was wanting to get out of what I really wanted to do.
And you have this nice story of a moment where you were having a conversation with a friend slash client that really opened your eyes and changed things for you. And, it sounds like before that, you're in that mode of doing what a man's got to do, taking
Mhm.
care of my business. I'm checking the boxes. I'm doing great. Everyone's telling me that I'm doing great. But then tell us about this conversation that you had that changed everything.
Yeah, so I think I've been talking about leaving. Like I said, I enjoyed the teaching aspect, but there are just certain things that I didn't like. So I remember I had a client, and I drove down to meet him and talk with him, and he kind of asked me if I was happy. It was somewhere along those lines. I was like, not really, but pays bill, it pays well for the most part. And yeah, and he's like, then why you stay? And I was just like, oh yeah, why would I leave? It's a good gig, and he's like, but why? And he kept asking me that why, and like trying to get that out of me. I was like, look, insurance. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. That's why you're staying. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I need stability. And I think from then on, I had a long drive, like 3 hour drive back, and I was like just thinking that through, just replaying that in my head, and I was just like, wow, is that really my only reason why I'm staying here? And I do like, some parts of the job, of course, I've learned so much, but, what do I really want to do? And then I think that was the moment for me where I was like, look, I'm young, I'm healthy, I think I can get by, and I have some savings. I think I could figure out a way to make this work. And then I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to be disciplined, save more money, and then figure out a plan. So that was like I guess like the first part of the moment. And then I had, other friends that were close to me as well that really encouraged me and said, just do it, what are you waiting for? So that really helped me. But that was definitely a catalyst for me to really jump out of that, I guess, that comfort zone. And I don't know if you're like, I love this analogy. I think a lot of people have seen it, but they say like this is a circle and that's your comfort zone, and all the good stuff happens like outside of that, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was. I was in that comfort zone, and I finally got out to try something new.
So I love that, but that takes guts. I mean, and also that's that self-awareness to go, oh man, I'm sure lots of people are listening, nodding along, going, I have definitely found myself staying in it for the insurance, right? And
Hmm.
so for the people who right now are going, this guy G, he knows what's up, and are drafting their resignation letter, what advice do you have for them? Because you talked about a couple of things like savings,
Hmm.
support,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. What helped you be well positioned to make that leap?
Yeah, I think sometimes a lot of people just kind of like they get tired of it. They go, screw you, boss, I'm leaving, and then they get out and then they just like start their own thing without a formal plan. But I think if you are thinking about doing that, it really you kind of need both of certainty and uncertainty. If you have too much uncertainty when you're starting a business, it will affect your mental health. And then when you get into it, you're not able to think clearly because now you're thinking about the next paycheck and how you're going to feed your family. And now you're not making good decisions for the business itself, right? So I think if you're doing it, especially right now, it's really important to have some sense of security and certainty, right? So, I had about 6 months to 8 months of savings. I was very frugal. And that gave me enough runway, at least, to, get the company in a position where I could start paying myself. And then early on, like I think most people, it depends on what industry you are, but they don't focus on profits. They're just like, yeah, we're just growing the company, so profit doesn't matter. Like early on, like profit does matter. You got to pay yourself, And I think one of the earlier book that I read was Profit First. I forget the author's name. I think it's Mike, but that book really helped me kind of understand. Like, look, you got to pay yourself. That's really important. Don't bleed the business, but at the same time, like you got to look out for yourself before you look out for the business. You got to look out for yourself for the business to grow. So I think that's one of the advice is that you want to have a plan of attack, and that will give you a higher chance of success with your business. And the thing is, even if you start your business, you can do everything right, and it could still go wrong. And that's
So
just the reality of it. Your statistic about the 90% of them failing, right? That's just the nature of it. So you got to be honest with yourself and go, okay, that can happen, but you got to be okay with it.
that's a really great point. And, we're already talking about some of those keys to success in those early days, but I want to take us back to the origin story. And so I think it started for you 2018 when you were during this break where you'd given yourself some space. You'd stepped away from where you
Hmm.
felt trapped and you'd freed your mind. And so you were teaching down in Atlanta. Well, my
Hmm.
current home city, and you just bought your Tesla Model 3. And so you were out driving and you had an epiphany. What was it?
Yeah. So, I was teaching like a winter session in Atlanta, and Atlanta traffic is awesome. Right, it's super bad, and I was like 1 hour. It was like 5 miles to an hour, but it gave me a lot of opportunity to just think. So I love that. I used to just walk and just think about things, right? So that was a really good opportunity, just daydreaming. And I was just like, man, there's got to be a better way because back then the Tesla, actually, it's still not, well, they changed it now, but back then in the 2017 and 18 model for the Model 3, it was just a door label button, and there was no handle to exit the door. So it's kind of like I think some other cars like a Porsche that has buttons and stuff like that, but it's not very common. It's usually like a handle, right? Some sort of lever or something like that. So no one would know how to exit the door, which meant that they would use this emergency cable or emergency lever, which back then could potentially damage the car because it was a frameless window. So I was just like, man, that's a high cost to pay if that were to happen. I've got to figure out a different way. So I ended up kind of just researching, on Google at first, and then just seeing what's out there. There wasn't much, and then I went to a local craft store, and I have never really been to Joann's much or Michael's, and I've been to both of them, I believe. And I just went there, and I was just in the aisle, just looking at every single vinyl, and I didn't even know what vinyl meant, right, or what it was. Never worked with it before, and I just started looking. And then, I think the next day, I move very fast. If I have an idea and I feel like it's good, I'll just keep moving, right? And I don't really care about the results necessarily. I'm just trying to get it moving, right? And it feels good for me. I love building things. So I think the next day and in the next 2 days, I looked up Craigslist, and I found like a Cricut cutter, and it's like a small little, not commercial, very home use vinyl cutter, and that's when I started, designing stuff and cutting stuff, and I was just amazed by that you can get this cutter for, I think I bought it for like 150, I believe. I put about less than 500 in my first initial investment on the business, and then I was just amazed about the opportunities, and I think immediately I was like, cool. Still not a business yet, but I was like, I bet other people prefer having this. Let me put it out on a Facebook group, and I had a good friend of mine. I was like, hey, I have this idea. He's been doing e-commerce for a bit. I was like, you in? And he was like, F yeah, he was like, let's go. And he was in a similar situation with me, so we just kind of partnered up. And then we just launched it on a Facebook group, and it was a very genuine and authentic going like, look, guys, I have this issue. You may have it too. Not really selling it, not a shop or anything, but you can PayPal me $7 and we'll send it to you. And I started
And so
getting
we're talking
random.
about stickers here, right? Just to make sure.
Right,
So what we're talking about is you had a user issue with your Tesla.
right.
Basically, if someone can't figure out how to get in or out of my car, they could bust it. I'm just going to make a sticker to
Yep,
help them do it. And then
exactly,
you thought, well, if I need this, other people might need it. So
exactly.
you went out there trying to help people,
Hmm.
and it basically just blew up
Yep.
overnight. And it's been really successful. But can you tell us how successful, just to give us a rough order of magnitude? Like, what's
Yeah.
the journey been from that first Facebook post and that trip to Joanne's? Where
Oh
are we
man,
now?
it was crazy because the first time, like first Facebook post that went out, like me and my partner back then were like, I had hundreds of orders, and then like we were just seeing the order come in because we had transitioned the blog because I've been blogging prior to this business, and we transitioned that into an e-commerce store like in 30 minutes. We just like flipped it, right? And then we're like, never done this, let's try it out. I had design and some web background, so we were able to do that, and we sold in hundreds, and it was like 200, and then 300, and it was in the hundreds, and then after that, I think the first month we ended up doing like $8,000 in sales, and it was very cheap to make these back then too. So it was a high margin, massive high margin. And I remember like staying up all night. I still have a job, so I still have to do that job. But then I would come home and I go right into my bedroom and start just cranking out the stickers, hundreds of them. And I had like stacks that were like this tall of just envelopes, and I was just stamping them. I was stamping every single one of them, and in the beginning, I mean, this is embarrassing. I didn't know how to stamp too. I was just like, just doing that. Like, and then I was like, okay, I need a better option for that. And then I would get, you know, uh, like a sponge. And then after that, we figured out a better way to do it. And then I just look back at it, and like our first packaging was like, it was a bloody like 8.5 by 11 paper, and I had wrote like a message to them, be like, "Thank you so much for purchasing this. I did not know you would buy this, but thank you. Here's what it is." I literally put it in between an 8.5 by 11 paper, and I just put it in the middle. I would double stick tape it in the middle, and then I'd fold it in three, and then I'll put it in an envelope and send it out. It was super like. I mean, a lot of my customers are still customers to this day, and they call themselves OG Tesla Bros or Tesla Bros, and they remember that, and they bring it up, and sometimes they'll like tweet at me and be like, remember this? I'm like, oh man, that's a long time ago. And then like the next iteration of packaging was like we literally got Ziploc bags, and then my partner figured out a way to like get business cards. We printed out a QR code, and then we folded it in half, and then we stapled on each side, so it looked a little bit better for sure. It wasn't bad looking back at it, but it was like you just figure stuff out that's not conventional. And I don't know if other people are doing it, but we were just kind of like just do. We were really thinking about a lot of other things.
Well, and they say that that rapid transformation and the ability to just try,
Hmm.
hit a roadblock,
Yep.
iterate, go again, that really helps with any business in order to be able to advance really quickly. And you're in retail as well, so it's very,
Hmm.
very fast paced. So it makes sense, and it sounds like it's really working for you. There are a couple of things that you said that I really want to draw out. One thing that I love is that you've built a brand that people see themselves being a part of. The fact that you've got people who refer to themselves as OGs is amazing, and a lot of businesses would envy that. And if we go right back to what you said in the origin story, one of your keys to success, and I really think that this is it, is you're a guy who has very strong values. You didn't
Hmm.
start thinking, I'm going to make a boatload of money and get rich quick. You went out there saying, I needed some help and I want to help other
Hmm.
people. And so, as somebody who has these really strong values, and you talk about it a lot as a part of your business, your culture, who you are, can you tell us a little bit about the role that your personal values play in your success and
Hmm.
the success of your company?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think one of the biggest value. I mean, one of our core values in the company is about customer obsession. Um, and I'm a big fan of like Tony Hsieh from Zappos, um, and he wrote a book about customer obsession, um, and that really played a role. And I almost took that at heart. And I think philosophically, I've always believed like you got to take care of the customers, and you really got to care. You got to be authentic. So I think it was really easy for me to connect with my customers because I was a customer too. So when I see that this guy got, you know, an order and it was completely damaged, look, I'm not even going to ask questions. I'm going to send you a new one. I'm not worrying about the profit. And for me, I'm very not extrinsically motivated. Like money isn't really a big motivating factor for me. So I genuinely want to build a company that's helpful and that impacts, a community. And in this case, it's just a community. So I think authentically and just in a genuine sense, it came at a good spot of like trying to just help the community and add value. That was a big part of me. It's like, I need to add value. Like if I'm gonna do something, I'm not gonna put anything negative. I gotta put something positive out there, and that's a big thing. So I definitely, I had all this like values inside, and I wasn't able to like get it across the team. So I think in the earlier years of my company, it was very. I think my employees had a difficult time reading my mind, and then eventually I got it out there and I put it in in written form, and I and now I hammer it. So it's always like, what does our core values say? That's our North Star. Let's look at that. What would we do then based on that? So now we use a EOS entrepreneur operating system now within the team to kind of make sure that we have the values of the team. And it's not really just my values anymore. It's become the team's value. And I think that's the difference. So like last year when we had our annual meeting offsite in the mountains, like we all came together and we reiterated and we reworded our core values. So I think that's a really big role in building a company because it's hard to build a company with a bad culture. So that was a big deal for me too, like coming out of a little bit more of a corporate side of like, I wanted to build a culture that's transparent, that's has values, that's clear values, and then a clear direction of where we're going.
I love that. And let's talk about transparent because I love your approach to radical transparency.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about that and in particular how you approach failure at your company because there's a great lesson in that.
Yeah, I fail so many times. It's ridiculous, right? And I love it though. It's like the only thing I just I don't know, it means progress for me, right? So if you're failing, it doesn't mean to blatantly fail and just fail on purpose all the time, but I think it requires like if you fail and you learn, that's huge. And so like during our team meetings, a lot of times we'll ask the question when we go into a meeting, we do something called a segue. And we try to just get in the space of the meeting and then we'll just ask each other, what did you fail this week? And then everybody talks around, oh, I screwed up here, but I fixed it and here's what I learned. And we want to openly talk about it. And I think it's important for leaders to openly talk about their mistakes because if they don't talk about their mistakes and they ask everybody else to talk about their mistakes, then how are they going to feel comfortable about that? So I'm like, look, I screwed up. It's like I screwed up with this Google Ad integration where it caused this, and that is bad. But here's what I did, here's what I learned, and here's what I did to prevent it from ever happening again. So I think that's a really, really big part of that. Like we do Kaizen, like the Toyota way culture, where
Absolutely.
it's like absolutely like always improving, always innovating, always trying to improve the process and trying to fix the core issue rather than just a surface issue of a problem, right? So we try to, we talk about radical transparency, and radical transparency is not for everybody. I think some people are okay with it and some people aren't. And if there aren't, they just don't fit in with our culture. But what that means is just being honest, not being an a-hole, but but really being honest with each other where you mean good,
Mm.
right? And you are actually trying to help that person. And that really helped us, I think, cut the crap almost and just kind of move forward quicker. I think a lot of times we just kind of circle and dance around each other and be like, kind of need this, but what were you really trying to say? So in the beginning, especially, it gets hard because in the beginning they'll kind of do that around me. I'll be like, tell me what you're trying to say. You know, don't dance around. Just say it. And then
Just
they're
say
like, oh, like really? And they're like, yes, say it. And then it's like, if you're not adding value to the meeting, get out. Like, then there's no point of you in being in the meeting. That's kind of like how Elon Musk handles some of the meetings. So I don't know. It's been working out pretty well for us as far as just I don't know, not wasting time.
That's perfect. And I think what I'm taking away from this too is that with the radical transparency, the key to it being successful is having a psychologically safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
People who you're kicking out of meetings aren't wondering whether or not you see value in them. It's quite the opposite. In fact, you see so much value in them that you want them to go and add value wherever they can and see fit to leave without having anybody start crying. And so you've developed this really nice relationship with the people who work in your organization where you trust each other, assume the best intention, and you're all off going and doing your stuff. And I talk to a lot of people and they're like, oh, I don't know if radical transparency is for me, or all this psychological safety stuff, it's a little bit too touchy-feely. But it has real results. And I think for you guys, tell me about it. There's some numbers in terms of your year-over-year growth. What kind of numbers are we talking about that you attribute to this strong culture?
I think our first year to second year, we grew about 4x or more than that. And then from second year, we grew another almost double. And then this year, we're doing another triple. From last quarter to this quarter, we grew another 50%. So we're seeing some sustainable growth. And it's not just like growth and then stop. We're constantly growing. So I think there are results to that. And, I believe in numbers. So like, everyone has a number, and this comes from Ray Dalio, the book Principles, right? He talks about it a lot, but we implement a scorecard system where everybody reports their numbers every week. So then every number is out there for every single person in the leadership team to be able to see. So there's nowhere to hide, including me, right? So if I'm not performing, people need to keep me accountable too, and I think it goes all ways. So, and then if they don't, I need to keep them accountable. So we have an organization that is transparent, not just in a cultural way where we talk and interact with each other, but really we have a system of transparency where other people can also see all of that as well.
I love that. You have referred to yourself a few times and the way that you behave, which I would think is actually different and a little bit more perhaps modern than some older organizations. It's a different approach. How do you think that the role of an employer is changing? Because I see you behaving in a way that's really in step with the expectation of employees or team members. So how do you think that that our role as leaders and employers is changing?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough question because I think it's changing every day, right? Especially with COVID, there's a lot of things that's been expedited. But I do think that the whole people are looking for jobs, not necessarily. I mean, money is important, but they are really looking for a place where they could belong, and I think the sense of belonging is really important. So I do think as a role as an employer, our role is to provide an infrastructure that's safe, but you just kind of get out of the way, equip them with the right tools, and then let them do their job and encourage them, right? And I think that's the role that I'm trying to take. And the thing is, we don't have it perfect. It may sound like it, but we really don't. We have a lot of issues, but we're working, and I'm trying to evolve every single day as well, just like everybody else is. So as things change, as the culture changes, as the world changes, I think it's really important for us not to be just kind of set in our own ways and just stay there, really evolving as well as the culture and the culture shift happens around us. Because if we just stay, they're going to leave eventually because they're going to go, there's a better place to work and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, that's just changing. So it is fun for me. So I read a lot of books around, leadership and just in general, just about how to lead a team in a better way and in a safer way, and to encourage them, to inspire them. That's a big part of my time now, is to try to figure that out.
It's magnificent. And what kind of feedback are you getting from the people that work with you? What are your retention rates like? What are they saying about your approach compared to, say, other places where they've worked?
They say it's different for sure. Like when they come in, they say they work more than they've ever have in the old place they did. However, they don't dread coming in, and also everybody in our team hangs out with each other. They're very friendly, and but the retention rate wise, I had like first year I didn't have many employees, but second and third year I have two employees right now that's been here with me for two years plus. Um, and then there's a couple like positions like operations that kind of move in and out quite a bit just because of the nature of that side. But yeah, they've been there for me with me for a good bit, um, and I'm hoping they stay longer too.
Wonderful. Something that sticks and really makes a huge difference to people, even if I think back to times where I've been an employee in an organization, there's something about having a guiding set of goals and principles and then being empowered to make a decision within the confines of that. So I love how your North Star is those values. Okay, what should I do right now? Well, look to the values. What are our values?
Hmm.
And then what should we do within those
Hmm.
confines? And it really just, to your point, just strips away all the bullshit. It just
Yep.
gives absolute clarity on what is the right thing to do. I
Hmm.
really love that. Now, I could sit here and talk to you all day because I love spending time and learning from you. But I'd like to transition to a final thought. We always like to wrap up our podcasts with a what's the one thing? Now, the title of this particular episode is Just Do It because we've talked about that. That's your personality. That's what you do. We just get out there and you just do it. But if you were to encourage all of us and all of our listeners today to just do it, that one
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
what would it be?
Um, I would say do what you love and be honest and authentic with yourself because I think if you don't love what you do and the motivation is like what can I mean there's a lot of successful companies, let's be honest, that have made a lot of money and started with a stem of that, but I think the ones that are wildly successful tend to be where the founders and the people who started it are absolutely passionate about what they do. They love what they do, and when you love what you do it just becomes a lot easier with the grind. When you're up sleeping on floors and staying up and working 20 hours a day for the next 6 months or something, like you're going to go through that right in the beginning stages because I worked at the university still while I was running this in the first year, but it made it really easy. Like I look back at that, I almost look at that as glory days, and it's like, man, that was freaking fun. Like I remember like being super excited after my class, going home, eating dinner, and then boom, I'm right back into the cutting machine and figuring stuff out. So it was just very enjoyable period. Hard, but very enjoyable period. And I think that will allow you to have a sustainable business and also just a healthier business in general. Um, and then also just being authentic to yourself. And if you're true to yourself, I think customers can also read that as well if you're not being authentic. So I think when people meet me or people talk to me, they know I care. They know I'm genuinely wanting to help them, right? And that's hard to BS. So I think that's a big part, and it's still a part of our culture. Like huge. I still do support. Like this morning, I did one. Because they had an issue, and I contact them, and it comes. It's not just a BS like answer of like, oh, just go to this link and check it out. It's like, look, man, I read your stuff. Yeah, this is BS. Like this sucks. I want to make it right for you. I'm gonna send you a new kit. It's coming tomorrow. You're taken care of. But I still do that to this day because I think, the thing about being authentic, that's really important, and being honest with yourself.
I love that. They say that long after people forget what you did, they'll remember how you made them feel. And when it comes to your customers, that's what gets you inside their hearts. That's what makes them feel connected to the brand, knowing that you care about them, that you took care of them. That is the secret sauce. And so you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, those two things. Do what you love and stay true to yourself. Thank you, Ji, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. For those of you who are inspired by Ji, and maybe you've got a Tesla that needs to get tricked out, you can learn more about him and his amazing team at testbros.com. That is TESBROS.com. And don't forget to join us back here every single Monday where we meet more amazing people. And if you'd like to feature on the show, don't hesitate. Reach out directly to us. We'd love to meet you.